Hello, welcome to another live stream with QA-Automan. And in this lesson, we're going to do a crash course on going from start to automating using IntelliJ and using Selenium. And we're going to just go straight from new project, start putting some stuff together, kind of stuff we've learned in a lot of the other videos, and just kind of do an iteration. If you're just looking for a crash course, you don't want to watch all these videos, this is the place to go if you want to just get the basics down. I do recommend going and watching the other videos to really see more of maybe some of the more deep dive of each of the kind of different features that you could be using. But I really believe that you can just kind of hit the ground running and just get a high level of what's going on in the QA automation realm. So we're just going to create a whole new file. So I boot up IntelliJ, and for those who don't know, I'll just show you right here. You just Google IntelliJ, you hit here, download, and you can just download that community version right here. And this will give you the IntelliJ. It's free. You don't have to worry about it. Don't worry about getting the ultimate license. You don't need any of that right now. Just get this. It's free. It will make your life 100 times better. They have Eclipse. That's old news, new stuff. This. So download that and you boot that up, and this is kind of what gets you here. For me, I'm going to just create a new file, new project. And then this one, we're going to create a Maven project. And we have, I've used Kotlin in the past. There's a few languages you can use. You have Java, you have Kotlin. It's whatever you want to use. I highly recommend Kotlin. And I'm gonna do Java first, and then I'll kind of show you how you can migrate into Kotlin in a later video. But in this one, we're just gonna go straight Java for now, and we can actually transition later down the pipe. So, we're just gonna do a Maven project for now. You don't need to worry about some archetype. These have some kind of built-in things. We don't need that stuff. We're just gonna click next. What's this group one? We're just gonna do QA-Automan, not like that group ID, QA-Automan. This is usually the website. Maybe if it was Amazon, it'd be com.amazon or whatever maybe. In my case, I'm just going to use a website that doesn't exist, Automan. The artifact, what is this? This is our Selenium tutorial. You probably want to name this something else, maybe Selenium tests or whatever, something to kind of dictate what this is. Version, keep that a snapshot. You can always mess with those later. Next, it will kind of give you the name, which is Selenium tutorial. We're cool with that. Finish. This won't prompt you here. I have another project open, but I'm just going to say this window for the sake of moving forward. So, what happens here? You have a few things. You probably have a prompt down the bottom. It's saying Maven projects need to be imported. I recommend auto import. Just every time you make changes into your Maven file, this POM file, it will update automatically. And if you're wondering what a POM file is, I'll get into that in a little bit. I definitely have videos that kind of talk about the setup there, but again, we're just going through all of the videos kind of in like a short, sweet kind of stream here. So when you get your project, you're going to see a couple things. You're going to have Java, test Java. You have some resources. You have your POM file. And just to kind of give you an idea, POM file is what dictates your how your project is compiled and built. So putting things like dependencies, if you're going to use TestNG or JUnit, importing your dependencies here. So every time you load this project or open this project somewhere else or someone else opens it, it knows exactly what it needs to do to compile and build and have everything set up in your projects. And you can also specify how your project's built. Maybe how you want to package it, all kinds of really crazy things. I will say that Maven is older. Gradle is the new thing, but for this case, just for speedy, just getting things quick and dirty, we're going to use Maven. I've been using Maven. I've been transitioning to Gradle. A lot of great things, incremental builds, blah, blah, yada, yada, yada. But in this case, we have our main and our test, right? This is where our tests will be. And then the main is where we're going to put our page objects. And so we're going to kind of hit the ground running here. What we want to do in when it comes to QA, right? The idea here is that you get a web page such as this and it has a navigation, and you want to be able to interact with these pages and do the things that these pages do, but for your automated tests. So what does that mean? They have a thing called a page object model. And what that does is it kind of uses these pages and you create classes to represent what these pages do. So for example, in this name generator, there's 2 drop downs here, a button and this pane and some text up here. So what you would do in your class on your project would be create a drop down to interact with both of these, click a button, and you'd have these functions allowing you to just do those things when you call them. So let's just kind of do that real quick. So test new, we're gonna create a new class, or actually let's create a new package. So the standards here are in your main, you always want to make sure you package things correctly. So in this case, I'm going to be automating this toolsandtaverns.com. So in that, I'm going to put tools and taverns. You want to make sure to do this. This is the standard. This is something you should be doing. Make sure to ingrain that in your head. You want to kind of do these standards across the board because everyone's doing them, and making sure that when you are coding with other developers and things of that nature, you kind of continue those practices. And then in here, I'm going to create a new package, and these are where we're going to keep our pages. Again, organization, and then we'll create our class. And this class will be we'll call this the name generator class. So name generator page. Yeah. So we have our page. So what are we going to do in this page? What do we need to do to make this happen? So a couple things. Before we even get started, which I totally forgot, we need to actually have Selenium part of our project. So that is where our POM file comes in. So we need to add that dependency. So how do we add dependencies? So let's go to our Google, and we're going to just type in Selenium Maven dependency. And what we're looking for is the mvnrepository.com. We'll just use that one as a good example. Selenium Java. So that's the guy you want right there. And you're listed with all these different, versions. Now, I highly recommend usually using the one that's not an alpha, right? Tried and true. It's being used. You can look over here, the usage. 156 users are using this one. Not many are using the new ones, just because you don't want to run into any kind of problems. So let's take this, copy, go back, and then we're going to paste. So, one thing to note before we paste, we need to add our dependencies with an S. It has to have an S. For those here, let's zoom in. So it has to have an S there. Space. And then we're going to paste our dependency. Now, this is everything you need. It has your version, your artifact, everything. It has a little comment just in case, hey, where'd you get this? You know exactly where you got it from. I recommend leaving those. You should always have comments. Comments are great. So we have our Selenium. That's how we're going to manipulate web browsers. Now, the second thing we need, and we're going to actually search here in our mvnrepository.com, is testng. And there we go, org.testng, testng. That looks good. If you're wondering, hey, how do I know which one? How do you know to use that one? There's this info kooks, there's org.magneto. This is testng.org is the original. It works. Just use that one. Now, you notice that there's a 7.0.0 versus the 6.1413, and you have 1,000 people using it versus the 125. Again, I just recommend using the newest stable version. So, again, copy this, move over to our dependencies, drop down, And every time I add a new dependencies, because we added and we clicked that button to enable auto import, it's auto adding all of these dependencies. And you can see that on the left side of the screen here, I have the external libraries. And if I open that, you can see that I have org.seleniumhq down the bottom, org.testng. So it auto adds these dependencies automatically. So again, it makes it easier for you to kind of add and remove things. So we got ourselves Selenium. We have ourselves testng. Now we can continue writing our page object. So we need to create the page objects. So what do we need from here? Well, from toolsandtaverns.com, we want to have the navigator, right? Because we probably want to go to the home page and then we want to navigate to the name. So we probably want to use it, the navigator button. And then we're going to need to have all these drop downs here. So I'm going to create the name generator page and just do these bits here. So let's start from the top. We have our drop down. We go to inspect. What do we have here? We have a selector, and so we're going to use CSS selector to allow us to find these elements on the page and interact with them. So in this case, we have this kind of placeholder, has a gender. What we want to find within a selector is something that makes this selector unique. So if I right click and I say copy, and I say this copy selector, what I can do is if I Control F, so you can find for inside your inspector here, you can paste here the selector, and it's giving me, hey, here is this selector and it's a hashtag form collect controllers select, which this hashtag here means it's an ID, and IDs are unique. But the person who developed this seems to have copied the ID, so now there are two IDs, and that's bad. So how do we get around this? Because we only want to select the one. So you have to find something that makes it a little more unique. So I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to say, okay, well, I have these classes. So if you have no ID, or the ID is not something that can be used, then I would look for class. In this case, we have this gender select inline form control. So let's do that. And to represent a class, you use the period, and that will allow you to say, hey, find the class. Shoot, I lost it. Gender dash select. So let's gender dash select. So cool. Adding this is saying, here's your element. That's correct. And it's one of one. So this is perfect. That's what we want. That's what we need. So I'm going to paste this here because that's our gender select. And I want to create a web element. So again, I talk about all of these things, and this is just a crash course. So if you're just following along, you can just copy paste doing what I'm doing here. And then, if you want to kind of figure out what exactly and why I'm doing these things, I have videos on CSS selectors. I have videos on creating your classes and all these other things. So we want to create a web element. So we're in Java, so we want to do public web element. And what is the name of our web element? This will be the gender dropdown. And I'm gonna stop it here. And I'm not going to initialize it because I'm going to use what is called a find by. And this annotation, find by, allows you to specify a CSS selector, a class, or whatever it may be, so that when you do interact with this gender dropdown, it will already find it for you automatically. So you don't have to keep having a function or a method that says, find it, then do something with it. Find it, click it, find it. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just call gender dropdown and it will find it instantly, and then you can just click. And you'll see that in action in a little bit. So find by, and what do we have to? We have to specify that this is a CSS selector. Now, if you look at find by, you'll probably see that there's like a bunch of different how, using, ID, name, class name. See, how do you know which one to use? just use CSS. You don't have to get fancy with using all these other ones. These other ones were there to have to make it easier. So you can just say, oh, class name, and then you can just put gender select in here and then call it a day. That is fine. But later down the line, when things need to change and it's not class name anymore, you know, and you're like, oh, I can't use class name, I have to use a CSS selector, you're going to have to change everything all over again. So I just recommend just use CSS and then put in the dot. I mean, it's one extra character, so you don't have to worry about that. You know, pros and cons. So I have my gender drop down. What's the next thing? We want to get the next one, the one below it. Now, this one, we already learned that the ID was bad, form control select. However, the class race-select seems to be something that looks like it could be pretty unique. Type that in, you notice it selects the 1, and we're at 1 of 1. So that means that this is a unique CSS selector. So I'm going to copy that whole thing there, come back here, and I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the gender dropdown, except for it's going to be a race dropdown. So public web element race dropdown, and then above it, find by CSS race selector. There we go. And then the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to get this button. Inspect button. It looks like, let's use the class again, see what happens. We're just testing. There we go. 1 of 1. Solid. So we got our button generate. And I pulled that from the class right here, just for those who are wondering. I know I'm moving a little fast. I understand that. Good thing there's a playback. So, you know, you can always, you know, play back put it at like, you know, slower speed or whatever it may be. But again, I'm just trying to get you all this information so that, you know, you got yourself some good kind of review material. So again, same exact thing. One thing you're going to notice in the QA automation world, it's a lot of the same, you know, typing, a lot of the same kind of syntax and things of that nature. And then that's fine. That's going to happen. So this one is the generate button. Generate button. Same thing. Find by, and then CSS equals. Boom. There we go. So we have gender, we have a drop down, a race drop down, a generate button, and then last but not least, we have our little guys right here. So something to note here is I would want all this text. So how do we get all of this text? You know, I would want to, let's see, if I just pull this name, .name, which is giving me this div, but we want the text, and it looks like there's a bunch of spans in here. So we're going to go a step further, and we're going to say, give me, you know, caret, or greater than symbol, span. Now, after I type that span, if you notice on the right here, it's 1 of 10, which there are 10 names. So this allows me to retrieve all 10 of these items here. So it's perfect. So we're going to copy this over. However, the difference is if we just do web element, that'd be 1 element, but we want 10 elements. So what we'll do here is we're going to put a list of web elements. And this is asking us to add in the Java util list and just import that. And for those who want to know what I just did, some magic here is when you have something like this, if you click on it and you press Alt-Enter, it will give you an option here to do something with this text. It's the same. It's the equivalent of clicking this little light bulb on the left. Alt-Enter is the hotkey. So what I'm doing is Alt-Enter, and I want to import class, and I want the java.util. You don't want the com.sun. Don't worry about that one. List, yeah, java.util. So we have that list, and then we're going to add in our name, which will be the generated names. And same thing, find by CSS. Boom. So we have list. This will give a list of generated names. So we have our name generator page now that will allow us to do all of the actions on here. Now we want to be able to get to the name generator. But how do we do that? We want to click this little name generator here. We want to interact with this nav. So what we want to do is we're going to create another class. And this isn't, so one of the things you have to think about, right, is if you're on a web page, if you notice, if I go to any of these other web pages, one thing that stays the same is the navigation. It doesn't change. So, you could on your page create it here and add the, name, whatever, navigation name link, right? You can create the web element here, but you would have to create it in all the pages. So what I'd recommend is creating another object. So we create another object. You can call this a page, but if you actually really think about it, websites nowadays are broken up into components. So you kind of have to think to yourself, okay, I have a page, but this is a component that's on all these pages, so it's not necessarily a page. So what exactly is it? You can continue with the idea that you can create it under the pages folder here, the package. However, I started using, especially with more how React nowadays, is I've been creating separate package and I've been calling them components. And this will allow me to put these one little bits of components and put them in these instead of pages. Conceptually, it's the same thing, right? You can put them under pages. It's not a page, but you can call it a component. It's fine. But the reason I'm making this distinction is you'll start to notice that there are kind of similarity components around of a website. And then someone who is automating, they'll start to figure out, oh, I feel like this should be in the components. And again, it's kind of how you want to set up and organize your own project. This is just kind of the QA-Automan flavor, I guess. I'm sure many people do this. So the name generator, this is going to be the navigation component. So we have the navigation component. And that will have all of these links here. If I inspect, I see this has a nav list. So if I add nav list, it gives me the whole thing. And it looks like it has these lists with little hrefs in this. We want those A's. So if we do li a, that will give us all 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, unfortunately, these are very ugly. You want to try to use IDs. If you can't use IDs, you want to use classes. If you can't use classes, you want to try to find something else unique, because these tags will often change, especially with code releases. However, this website is, again, it's not developed the best. It could use some work. So, and that's okay. We're just gonna adapt, and that's the point of QA. Is we adapt, trying to make sure we can do the best we can to ensure the quality of any product. So we're gonna take that nav list, and we're gonna use this because that gives us all 7. We'll come back here, and again, same thing. We're gonna use a list. So public web element. Oh, we want list. That's right. List. Web element, and this will be the actually no, that's silly. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be creating one per navigation. That's bad. I just thought about it. That's not efficient. These are specific buttons. We should make them specific buttons. So instead, what we'll do is nav list li, and then we'll use the a using this nth child, like so. This li nth child 1a. So what is this saying? This is saying go to the nav list, this guy right here, boop. Then under nav list, I'm looking for the li tag and I'm looking for the child, the first child of your li tag. Boop. And then after that, I want to find a child of a tag, which is here. Boop. So we have our UL, we have our nav list li, first one a, and that will always give us the home. Now, one thing to think about is, okay, if I did this, right, and I came up here and I create my web element and I call this home link and I find by CSS. Oops. Here, zoom in. If I do something like this and I say, okay, this is the home link, li and child 1a. Now, there's actually a problem here. And the problem is, if at any given point that this website ends up changing this link to something else, like the NPC generator goes to the top or home goes somewhere else, clicking this button will no longer take you to the home link. So now you have to think to yourself, do you want to make sure you're clicking the home link, or do you want to make sure the first one's the home link every time? And that's something you kind of have to think about when it comes to like writing all of your classes and components. You really have to think ahead. So if you were to say, well, the product or the website, the rules are this is the order in which these links need to stay or be, then doing something like this is something you should continue to do. However, if that's not the case, and that doesn't matter how they look or how they can be generated any way you want, and it doesn't matter, then what I would recommend instead to make sure you're always hitting the home link is to look for this href instead of the li-nth child. So an example of that would be nav list, and in your nav list, you just skip over and just say a. And adding a space in a CSS selector here will tell you anything under the nav list recursively, jumping through all of the different tags, find an A, and then I'm going to say, well, I'm going to find an A with an href with the name, with the value of / because that's home. If you did something like this, if home was down here or anywhere on this nav list, you would always click it officially. So, kind of think about that when you're writing your page objects. It's really important. So in my case, it has to be the top. That's where I want it. So I'm going to keep this as is. I was just kind of going on a little tangent there. So we have our home link. And let's just kind of hurry up and just kind of do a few of the other ones. Coinage calculator is the other one. So one thing in IntelliJ, if you select a bunch of lines and you do Control D, it will duplicate those lines. And that will make it easier for you to kind of maybe write code faster. But again, it's more error prone. So you have to kind of make sure you know what you're doing when you do that. So li-nth child 2, this is not the home link. This is the coinage calc link. What you call it that? We're not going to do all of them, but we are going to do the last one, which is the name calculator, which is the third one down. And this is the name generator link. Boom. There we go. Okay. So we have our links. We have that done. We have our name generator done. So what we want to do is we want to now create a test that will take us there. Click the drop downs, click the generate some names. Here we go. So to do that, back in our project here on the left hand side, we have our test. We'll go to Java. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to right click new. And we're going to go in a package and we'll call it com.toolsandtaverns. And inside this, we're going to create some tests. In our case, we're going to create a class. So right click, new Java class. Name this name generator tests. Short and sweet. Again, you want to be kind of descriptive, and organization it becomes like a whole other kind of art form. It really does. It's something that could really take a lot of time, and you can kind of start building out your project, and then before you know it, you're like, man, I would totally wish I put all these components in pages. Why did I create these components? That will happen 6 months from now. It happens for everybody. It won't be you. So what you think is great today might not be great tomorrow. What I'm teaching you today, in 6 months, I could teach you something else. It's ever evolving, especially when you find things that are more tried and true. I've been doing this for about 6 years now. Not the components, but the pages. I've been doing it for like 6 years now. Easy, if not more. So again, it's just something to kind of think about when you are kind of organizing your things. So now we want to start creating tests. So the first thing we need is a driver. So let's just create our driver here. We're going to say web driver. And then we need to, so that's not initialized yet, but that's going to be what we're going to use to initialize. We also need a test. So let's create a test here. Not class. Public. What is it? What is this going to do? This is a test, right? Where's this testing? Test name generator. And what is this going to return? Nothing. It's going to be void. So public void test name generator. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see. We need to put this annotation test. This is TestNG. You're telling TestNG, hey, here's my test. I want you to run these when I run tests. And it says, okay. Gives you the thumbs up. Inside this test name generator, what we want to do is actually we want to create our page objects as well. So we have our name generator page object, name generator page. Sure, Alt Enter. Then our navigation component. Because these are the two things that we need to use to interact with our website. And we can almost begin. However, we need to create all of our objects, our driver, our name gen, and our navigation component. So to do that, we want to create another function, and we'll just call this driver setup. Name doesn't matter. Just be descriptive with what your functions are or methods. And this we're going to use is before class. Now you'll notice that there are many different annotations when you type in before. There's test, suite, method, groups, and class. I have a stream. If you look at my past streams, I do talk about this. I was thinking about creating a video that kind of just specifies what each of these do and how and when you should use them. But for now, I'm just going to say we want to use this before class. And what this is telling us is before we run all of our tests in this class, I want you to run this first. So in that case, we want to create our web driver. Driver equals Chrome driver. Problem. The problem here is we have to install our Chrome driver first. So we'll get to that in 1 second. Actually, we'll do it now. So what we need is we need to get our Chrome driver, and we're going to run this locally. So we should probably store it in our project because it's a good place to have it and find it and do whatever you need to do. So in our main, in in the common tools and taverns, new package, and we'll just call this drivers. Inside this, I'm going to add the Chrome driver. So to get the Chrome driver, just go to good old Google and say, hey, give me the Chrome driver, please. Chrome driver, let's go to downloads. And one of the things you want to make sure that you want to test for is which browser are you using? You want to make sure it matches up with the browser that you're using. So we want, what do we want? How do I find is there an about page? Yeah, there it is. We're using 78.0.3904.97. So, yeah, so we want 78.0. 78.0, here it is. Click that. We're going to download. We're using Windows, so we'll just download the Windows. Showing. Let's see. So I'm going to download that. I'm going to add this to our. Where is it? Download. Let's see. Chrome driver. Here it is. All right. So I have our Chrome driver. Let's close. We need this, but we're going to minimize this. And I'm going to click and drag this into the drivers. Yes, move it over, please. Thanks a ton. So there we go. We have our Chrome driver.exe. So once you have your driver in your project, we want to, we have to tell it, hey, this is where you find the Chrome driver. Let's see, the Chrome driver. If I go back to Chrome driver, there is a, can't remember the name of the thing. That's the path to Chrome. We want to set it up in a specific way. Where is that? Oh my gosh. No, what I want. I always like what oh, here it is, the system property here. So it's funny, you know, I set this up every so often, so it's always hard to remember what this is. So it's system.setProperty webdriver.chrome.driver. That's what it is. And then we need to set the path to our driver, which our driver is right here. I'm going to copy this, copy relative path, and we're going to paste this here. Almost there. It's at com, but we want to go all the way to where our POM file is, which is source. So we need to com. We need to do source main Java. I believe this is right. So here we go. Let's see. Okay. So we have this. We want to call the Chrome driver, which will set up our driver. And then we need to initialize our pages. Now, one of the secrets with this web element here is that we need the driver to initialize each of these web elements. You need the driver to be passed in. So we're going to create a constructor here. Actually, no, we're going to create a base. We're going to create a base object. We're going to create a base page. So, under pages, I'm going to create, no, under components, I'm going to create a new class, and we're going to call this component base. And component base, will be abstract. And the reason and I know I'm doing some maybe fancy things if you're not familiar with what that means. Abstract means that I can't just come out over here to, let's see, where am I creating stuff? I can't say that, you know, foo. Like if I tried to initialize this class here, I can't just say component base. It won't allow you just to kind of set these up like or initialize them by using just component base. You have to, it has to be from a derived class. So this is just kind of making it so that your code is more has more intent, I guess. So the component base here will have a following constructor, which will do the follow, which will take in a web driver. And this will run what is called the page, is it page factory? Yeah, page factory dot init elements. So page factory in an elements is saying, take all of my elements, like the web elements and things of that nature, and I want you to take the driver and initialize all of these elements, and it will create is what is called like a class. It will proxy this class. I'm not going to get into the details. You don't need to know these right away, but just know that when you set this page factory up, you'll be taking your classes and you'll be able to initialize them so that when you call your web elements, they'll be able to be found immediately. So we're passing in our driver, and it's saying, which class do you want to proxy? This page, the page that I'm setting the WebDriver for. So, and that's it. This is all you need to do here. Because now you can come over to your page objects here, and you can extend component base. Now it's complaining. It's saying, hey, I need you to initialize. I need you to, has a constructor and it needs a driver. So what we need to do here is we're going to create a constructor for name generator page web driver, and then we're going to say oh wait, whoops, don't do that. What am I doing? There we go. Confusing my languages. So actually, do I need that? Yeah, I do. Okay. Oh, it's kind of funny. If you come over to name generator and you hit Alt Enter, it says create constructor matching super. So what it'll do is it'll automatically create your constructors for you, which is kind of nice. I was kind of typing the whole thing out. I'm just moving it up there. I like it up top. That's just a personal preference. So you know what you need to do when you construct it. So what this is saying is now on my test over here, when I want to create my name generator equals new name generator page, I can pass in driver. And now the driver will come in and initialize all those web elements. And we're going to have to do the same for navigation component as well. So extends component base, and then it's complaining because we need our constructor. Automagic, we're not going to edit right now, it's fine. Just automagic, let it happen. Same thing. We need to create our object here. Equals new navigation component driver. Oops, we want to add our little guy. There it is. These are complaining, say they should be set to private. We should oblige. Make it private. They don't need to be public in case someone starts reusing this class for some reason. Yeah. So we have our components. We have them initialized. We're ready to go. The piece here is let's start testing. So what do we want to do? We want to go straight to toolsandtaverns.com. So let's go. Driver.get is allowing you to open up web pages. So the page that we want is https://www.toolsandtaverns.com. There we go. Then what do we do after we go to toolsandtaverns.com? We want to let's just do it right here. So we're home. We're here at toolsandtaverns.com. We want to click the name generator. So let's click the name generator. So we say name generator. No, navigation. We want to go to the navigation dot the name generator link. And what do we want to do with it? We want to click it. So there. We go to Tools and Taverns. We go to name generator. We click the name generator link. Then, what's the next thing we want to do? We click the name generator link. We want to set these values to something. So this top one, let's set it to female, and this one to human, female human. So we say, now that we're on that page, we say name generator, gender dropdown. So this is a dropdown. So what we have to do is we have to create a select object. So you can say in here, we can say, what is this? Select. We want the selenium select. Drop down equals new select, which takes in a web element. So what this thing does is it will take this web element, and you're saying this is a select, which is a drop down, and then I want you to take this object, this drop down object, and allows you to select by value index or visible text. And you would have to do this for every single drop down. One of the best ways to do this is you can add something like this to the name generator. So you can create a function here. Just say public void select gender from dropdown. So you can kind of do this here, and then you can say dropdown dot select by value. The value we want is female. And how I know that, if I go to inspect, what it's looking for is under select these options. It's looking for these values: male, female, random gender. Index, it would be 0, 1, 2. From value, probably a better choice. In our case, it's female. And then select female. And that's it. And we're going to do the copy paste. We're just going to add a second one here, which is select race from dropdown. And in our case, we're going to use the race dropdown here. And we want to, we actually want to pass in these values for these. I jumped the gun here. We don't want to hard code this as female because we want to be able to select different things later. So instead, you can pass in a string and say value and have it pass in a value here. Same thing down here. If you want to have this, you can just say race, and this one say gender. Up to you. It's how you want to make things more descriptive for those who are trying to use your code. So this will make things a lot easier. So instead of having all this text in your class, you can have a better readable test and say that the name dropdown generator page, and we want to say select gender from dropdown, and then we'll say female. After that, we're going to say name generator page dot select race from dropdown, and we're going to say human. Again, if we go back to this inspect, we look at all the different options here. We have random race, dwarf, elf, gnome, halfling, all these little bits here. We just wanted human, so human. Then lastly, we want to click our button, name generator dot generate name generate button dot click. That allows us to take web elements and click them. Then the following option is to make sure that our names are generated. So dot size. Well, okay. Well, we'll get to this test in a second, but let's just make sure we do the following. Before we start running this test here, let's do the following. Thread dot sleep. Oops. The reason we're sleeping here is just we want to see everything happen. Let's do for 7 seconds. And it's complaining because you need to add an exception. So one cool thing about these test methods is you can surround it by try and catch would probably be the better thing to do. Otherwise, you can add exception here to say, hey, this will throw an interrupt exception, and that's fine to do for these tests. You can probably just make it easier and just say it'll just have the possibility of throwing an exception. It's totally up to you. If you want to be explicit, be explicit. If you just want to be lazy, you can do something like this. So, we're going to right click and you take your thing and right click, and we're going to run the tests. If you need to add the plugin for TestNG for IntelliJ and it's not part of your IntelliJ, you can go to the settings and you can go to plugins and you can type in testng. I think, no, we don't want that. Install, there it is. I have it already installed, but you can install the testng plugin if it's not enabled. So I would recommend doing that in your plugins, and that will allow you to easily kind of run stuff in your class. So we right click and run. So hopefully if we did everything right, we should see an error. Release version 5 not supported. So what this is telling me is that my project and the way it's set up is not using the correct Java language. So you can do two things. You can go to your project up here and go to project structure and go to your module and say, hey, stop using 5, use 10, 12, or whatever it is. Or you can come down to the bottom here, and I believe you add a build. Shoot. I cannot there we go. Set Maven. I haven't done this in Java for a little bit of time, but let's just see. Oh shoot. No, it won't let me. Okay. Maven set Java build version. Yeah. There's a thing in here somewhere. There it is. Okay. Yeah. Properties. That's the property. That's what we want. And you can set this anywhere. Set up top. Saying a 1.8, that's fine. We're not trying to do anything fancy. And so this, again, when you paste it in, it should auto magically work. Let's recompile. What? All right. Let's see what is going on here. Let us debug. Is this it? New releases option. Oh, replaces 3 flag. So then you can do something like this. Do we want to do that? Java 9 and beyond. Okay, so this is for Java 8. We're on Java 10. I'm using OpenJDK 10. So let's do this and be doing the right thing. So this, and then we'll say this to 10. And then we will right click and just re-import. Everything good? There we go. Debug these problems. There we go. Okay. That was my fault. I'm not using 8. I am using OpenJDK 10. So Maven has to do it this way. Fun. So the next thing we want to do is, now that we've set our compilation, we can run this bad boy. Here we go. Go back to our test. Run. Here we so first snafu. It doesn't, like, needs the whole source, needs the whole kit and caboodle. So we can do two things. We can hard code what we need, like D workspace, or we can let's see, it's public string user directory equals system.get property, and I think it's user.directory, like this. And then we are going to create this string.format, and we will be putting our in here, user directory, and then this will be our directory, which is Man, that's C#. What is it in Java? What is, oh my gosh, there we go. I think this will do it. Let's find out. Here we go. Run it again. Okay, perfect. So something to note. There it is. Female, human. Click to generate. This seemed to take a little bit of time. That's something that we could note, and that's really good to know. And there we go. It's checked. Now, 3 problems. First, this browser didn't close when we were done. We have to do cleanup. Second, this took a little bit of time to kind of generate. So we need to make sure that that when these get generated, they're different. And then third, we'll close this. This user directory is what this does is it gives you the base directory of where your project sits. And the reason we do something like this is it will allow us to run this anywhere on any computer, and it will always find your driver. This is really important to do stuff like this because you have to really think forward and make sure that you're doing the right things in the beginning so you don't run into problems later down the line. Granted, you will always run into problems like I have so far in the stream. So it's just things, thinking forward, thinking ahead. It's always something you should learn over time as a programmer. It took me years and I'm still learning. So don't think it's something you can master. Maybe you can. Maybe you're a genius and that's awesome. But everyone learns at their own pace and that's fine. The point is that you're trying and you'll get there. It just takes time. It takes practice. So you have your user directory. We set that up. It ran. Now we need to tear this down. So cool thing is we know what before class does, but after these tests are done, we want to run after class. So create a void and we'll call it this tear down. And then we will take our fun driver and say quit. You'll notice that there's a quit and a close. Now, the difference here quickly is that quit will take your entire session and shut it down. Close will take your currently opened window and close that before, and it won't, but your session will still persist. So, quit and close are 2 different things. We want to shut the whole thing down. We're like, we are done. Just get rid of the session, clean it up, stop using 100,000 gigs of memory, Chrome, thanks. So we're going to quit. And it's also, we can even add some logs here, right? Let's do system.out.print, and we'll add some logs here. We'll just say, closed driver. Let's add some setting up WebDriver, closed WebDriver, just be consistent. And yeah, so cool. I think we're doing everything. So we did that. So we know what this does. We are cleaning our thing up. Now the last thing is we generated our names. One of the things is it took some time. How much time did it take? We don't know, and it plays. So the thing is we can do 2 things. We can, if we look over here and we see what this is about, you notice if I go to the name generator page, it already has names on there. The one time we saw it said default. This varies. It's really hard to have an expected result, right? Because this is random, right? If I click and this is all random. How do you test random? That's very tricky. So one of the things we can do at least is just make sure that the names that existed when we were there are different after we generate. That's like one of the kind of best ways to kind of test to make sure that things are changing and manipulating. The better example would be to have preset data, but we don't have that luxury at the moment. So in that case, what we're going to do is before we do anything, we're going to open our page, we're going to go to the name generator, and we're going to store these into a list. Web element. Actually, we want the strings, right? if I say strings and these are the names on load equal dot. And what's going to happen is what we want to do, we're going to get really fancy right now. We're going to say this returns us a list. Because it's a list, we can stream this list and do some fancy fun things. One of the fancy fun things we want to do is we want to use this map function. And what this map function will do is you can take all of the elements, which are web elements, these guys, and we're going to say, take each one of those, and I want you to turn them into the text. So to do that, we say our element, and we say element dot get text, and get text will retrieve the text for each of those elements. So it will go to each one of these here in this span, and it will take this and store it in a list, and it will do it for every single one of these elements. It is yelling at us because we need to now, after we do the dot map, we need to say collect, and we want to turn this into a list. So collectors dot to list. So this will turn into the list that we've specified the type for, which is list string. So what's going on? We say we want to create a list string, take our web elements, and each web element in our list of web elements, we want to get the text from that, and then we want to take all of the text, so we'll have all 10 of those names, and we're going to recollect them into a new list and store them into name on load. One of the things you see this highlighted, and you're like, why is this thing highlighted? Get rid of it. What it's Alt-Enter, it will say replace lambda with method reference. It's giving you some kind of shorthand syntax here, making it all fancy and looking like, more of you're super advanced, and that's okay to do. This is nice, right? Because if you start learning how to do this using the shorthand syntax, it would make a lot of things more easier to read and less characters on the screen. And that's the end of the day what we kind of want to try to achieve, right? Is just clean, concise, readable code. So so now we have our name on load, or names on load. Then we do our stuff. Then after that, we'll wait 7 seconds. We'll keep it there. We want to do the same thing again. Now, one of the things we want to do, instead of rewriting this over and over and over again, let's put it in our function here. And we'll say public list string and say, hey, let's get all of the names. Get generated names. So this will return. So now we're going to have this function here that will say we want to get the generated names instead and return and do that thing, the stream map collect. And the reason we want to do that is we can now reuse that that block of code to make it so that it's more readable, right? On load, go to the name get the generated names, and now it will run through that every single time. Because after the fact, we can just paste it down here, and instead of names on load, we will say names after generate. So we get it before and after. Now, what we want to do is we want to assert not equals, or no, assert not true. We want to assert that each of these names on load, we're going to go through each of them and make sure that nothing is contained from the names that are generated after. So yeah, sorry, I had to think. names on load. Yes. So assert not true, names on load dot, what do we want to do? We want to say contains all. There we go. I think we want to do this. Why is this complaining? Oh, not assert false. That's what we want. Assert false. Names do not match. All right. So now let's run it. Here we go. Thinking. And then it passed. So one of the things I would say for this, I'm running out of time here. One of the things I would say here is I wouldn't say contains on load. What I would do is I would do a different thing where I would say stream. What we want to do is we want to stream this and say any match that the elements, the name dot contains, this contains name. Okay, so what am I doing here? I am, again, it's saying replace with lambda. Okay, so what I'm saying here is I'm saying assert that none of this is true, that every single one of these names in the name load, check each one of them and make sure that none of them are in the names after I've generated. So that's what we want to look for, right? The contains all was bad. This is where you want to be. So now let's just double check, run again, and check it out. Here we go. Female human generate. Pass. There we go. There you go, guys. And that's your first test. I mean, that is the meat and potatoes of just getting everything from the ground up, and a lot of learnings along the way. So I'm out of time, guys. Thank you so much for, chiming in and coming in. I've seen a few guys jumping in, viewers and such. Ask questions, please. If you have anything, I'm here to help you, and you can always comment down below. And ask me anything, and I'm always available to try to help you guys. And if you have code or if you have projects that you want to showcase and show me, I can use that to my advantage and kind of use that to showcase some of the cool things you can do and help you kind of solve problems, would be amazing. So until then, guys, I'll see you online, and you guys got to keep automating.